Hi everyone, I'm Brittany Eisenman. I am the founding principal of Stokefire. Today we'll be learning why solid improvement work can falter when deep system constraints quietly shape outcomes. Tate will show us how to see and address what is structurally holding progress back and how to translate your efforts into stable, sustained gains. He is the inventor of Linden's Lens and the framework that you're about to learn. He is our chief consultant and strategist here at Stokefire. Tate builds tools to help organizations understand why performance problems repeat and how to fix them in a way that lasts. He started his career in strategic communications, working for clients like Google, DARPA, and Meals on Wheels America. Tate specializes in bringing tangible behavior change to resistant audiences and realized that this very same theories that he developed for that purpose could be even more powerful when applied within organizations themselves, where systems literally shape how people respond to pressure. He created tools to help leaders see where problems are coming from and to predict which changes can actually hold before you invest time and effort. So today, he works with organizations and practitioners to apply his model in real world settings.
Thank you, Brittany. I am going to jump right into this, surfacing the hidden structure beneath performance problems. You've already been doing this work. You've mapped processes, you've tracked the numbers, you've been pushing for improvement, and most likely, results still stall, drift, or they snap back. So this session is not about doing more improvement work. It's about understanding why solid work sometimes doesn't hold. And more importantly, how to see what load your organization is carrying or failing to carry. This is a world I think most of you live in. You run event boards, you map and improve processes, the work gets tighter, waste goes down, and for a while things improve. And then something starts to slip. A workaround comes back, a delay shows up, a defect reappears, and you respond, you adjust, you run another improvement cycle. You get some improvement and then return to the old problems. Maybe not the exact same issue, but it's an echo or it rhymes. So at some point, we have to question things. If we're doing good work, why aren't we getting lasting results? Why can't we get out of the cycle? And so here's the real world example. January 2024, a Boeing 737 MAX plane experienced a door plug failure mid-flight. The panel blew out. The plane made an emergency landing. No one died, but it was a very visible failure. And when something like this happens, the first instinct might be to ask, first, whether or not everybody's okay, which other than a few injuries, they were. The instinct is to try to figure out who screwed up, who allowed the defect, who missed a step. Those are basically process questions, but they're focused on performance. But it's more important to understand something broader. Was it a one-time failure or the result of something that can lead to more problems? Because failures like this don't usually come out of nowhere. If you look, there are always signals, delays that start to stack up. Workarounds and rework become normal. People stop questioning. The causes can be just about anything. So as long as there's situations that your specific organization isn't built to handle well, like supply issues potentially, or customer backlogs, regulatory restrictions, the signals can come from just about anywhere. And each of them likely can be explained in isolation. In this specific case, production pressure was massive. Boeing had a 10-year wait list and had already shifted from their baseline delivery mode of 31 planes per month to a stretch goal. I believe they were over 38, on their way to over 50. They claimed to be following best practices and operating within capacity, but other in-flight incidents, whistleblower reports, investigative reports kept occurring before the door fell out. So the door was repetition. The more that signals repeat, the less likely it is to be caused by randomness or individual performance. The signals are telling you something about how your system is working under load. And so here's the first shift. If you keep getting the same type of result, your system is probably designed to deliver it. Probably not intentionally in this case, so nobody said, let's try to build the first plane to lose a door in mid-flight. I get it. But structurally, the organization was existing in a way that made losing the door and the other in-flight issues possible, much more likely. No, there wasn't a culture of carelessness or bad intent, but the organization delivered the exact quality of planes that their process was optimized, built to deliver. It came from how their system is set up to handle pressure, trade-offs, and decisions. So think about it this way. You got a ball. If a ball rolls down a hill in the same direction every time you do it, we generally don't call that a performance problem. We don't blame the ball for rolling down the hill. We look at the shape of the hill, we test the wind, we look for magnets or strings, some reason why it's going in the direction it's going. In organizations, repeated results basically show us the shape of the proverbial hill. And that idea that we've got a slope that maybe we didn't intend to create is really important in improvement work. Because if the system itself is producing the pattern, fixing the resulting behavior either isn't going to work or won't hold. Sooner or later, the system slope pulls behavior back to what it was. It's not about finding who made the mistake and training them not to make it. It's looking at the whole thing from a different perspective. Is our organization, our team, as it exists today in reality, are we designed to produce this result or prevent it? To figure it out, we have to separate two things that tend to get treated as the same. Process, sequence of steps. A system is what shapes how those steps actually happen. The system decides things like what matters more when there's pressure, what gets rewarded, what gets ignored, what things get fixed, and what gets pushed into the future. You can improve the process and yet not change the result if the system underneath doesn't change too, because every system is protecting something. Sometimes it protects speed, sometimes it protects safety or cost control, but a system under load can't protect all of those at the same time. If we push really hard on speed, then safety, stability, and control suffer. If we push hard on safety checks, speed and cost increase. That's normal, it's expected. So when we see a recurring problem or performance plateau, the moment we realize it's happening, we should be thinking, what's our system trying to do? What's it trying to protect right now? Because sometimes the system is actually doing its job really well. The system forces a choice. Hit the number or slow down to investigate. And that choice isn't made in the moment. It's built into how the system works. In the Boeing case, the system was under pressure to deliver planes. Delays were costly. Top-line metrics were focused on production and pretty much that alone. Stopping the line creates problems. Over time, the system made a shift, not in a single meeting, not all at once, but through shifting incentives, changes in pressure, and reinforcement. Speed started to win over certainty. After the incident, investigators went back and found that most meaningful incentives made safety and quality harder, not easier. Given these incentives where 75% of the bonus is based on financial targets, all the major metrics are focused on maximizing productivity, and late defects and all work stoppages take real cash out of the pockets of employees. With those incentives, it didn't matter what the official purpose of the organization was. The rules and the systems teach everyone work faster, take risks, don't escalate issues, and push product out the door. Doesn't matter that safety is a core principle. In the real world where people do the work, the math works out differently. The system is designed to trade safety for production and to deliver that consistently and repeatedly. And once the trade-off is set, it shows up everywhere. And there's more. Not all work moves the same way. Some work needs to move fast, some needs to move carefully. Some is about action, others are analysis. If you treat all the work the same, you create friction. Different teams are built to handle different kinds of problems. So when we see teams behaving differently, it can mean that the work they're doing and the thing they've been protecting requires it, a different way of acting, of moving. And it's visible in everyday operations. So think about an emergency department at a hospital. Do they act before they know all the facts or wait as long as it takes to fully understand the situation before they get to work? Do they share information transparently with the team or contain it so that it won't overwhelm people? Do they work around processes that aren't getting results or take the time to fix them in the moment? Do they follow standards and coordinate efforts, or do they allow everyone to do their own thing? Generally speaking, there aren't right answers, but when it comes to the specific load, ideally we'd be looking at action, sharing, speed, and alignment. Now think about another role, hospital case management or administration. Legally, they have to have full understanding and they need to strictly contain information. HIPAA is a term I hear a lot, and it's something that means they have to be careful with it. Going around established processes creates problems, exceptions that can end up denying coverage, not getting payments canceled. Everything needs to be coordinated and aligned. Both behaviors are correct, but they move differently. If you force one to operate like the other, you create problems. And this is where archetypes come in. Workplace archetypes are just patterns of how work moves. Each one protects something important. Engineering protects accuracy and verification. Manufacturing protects flow and consistency. Neither is wrong, but they're built for different kinds of load. But rather than hit all 16 of them here and try to teach you about each one, we'll email a booklet that gives you an overview of what the archetypes are and how they work to anyone who completes the feedback form and selects an option to receive it. It contains directions to approximate your archetype, an overview of what archetypes are, and a bit about the rest of the system you're going to hear about today and how that works. And then it'll give you something for each of the 16 archetypes, what the model is, where it works best, what it protects, at what cost, why it works, and what it looks like in action, the kind of loads that it bears well, or that cause it to break. It's a way to get a clear, basic understanding of what you're dealing with. The idea isn't to read it front to back, it's to find your archetype and give you a sense of why you're having the challenges that you're having. And I would actually love to get your feedback on it. We wrote it just because of this particular presentation, and we're hopeful that it fills the need. Okay, back to Boeing. Engineering and manufacturing have to work together. Engineering needs to understand before acting. They got to work through problems, not around them. Manufacturing needs to keep the line moving, stay on task, and work around problems to hit their numbers. When those meet under pressure, you get tension. If the system isn't built to handle it well, you get stuck in the muddy middle. Decisions are unclear, standards get bent, all the problems get pushed forward instead of resolved. So you end up with, oddly, a system that is stable, but can't deliver what either of the conflicting archetypes are designed to deliver. It doesn't make the organization crumble. It allows it to keep working, but it settles into this lower plateau of performance. Not the best, but not a complete failure. And from what we've seen, this is where a lot of organizations get stuck because nothing looks broken enough to force a huge change, and people are picking up the drop balls and putting out fires as they find them. You're surviving. Nothing improves enough, though, to reach the targets. When there are problems, we see it in behavior first. That's the thing that's visible. We see someone skip a step or push something through. A defect shows up late. So it's natural to focus on whatever behavior led to it. We coach, we retrain, we correct the mistakes individuals or teams make. But behavior is the last thing in the chain. Whatever it was that caused or enabled that behavior, that thing came first. And we should be seeking it out. So not asking the who made the mistake, focusing on where did the system stop carrying the load. So it's hard to answer across teams, even for small issues. I'm not demonstrating it today. I think I might be mentioning at the end. We built a tool that does this kind of diagnosis systematically, automatically, so you don't have to rely on guesswork or whoever's in the room. And I'll come back to that. For right now, we're trying to figure out at what point the structure began to encourage or enable the wrong behavior. Because when the system stops carrying the load, who compensates? The people. And that changes behavior. And to see that, we need to look somewhere else. Think of your organization like a bridge. You have to carry a load, just like real bridges. You have customers, you got demand, other pressure, wind in the real world. If structure is designed for the loads it's facing, things go smoothly. If your structure isn't designed for the environment, strain shows up in the people forced to compensate for it. And so we can walk through this one layer at a time. Reality, out here. It's the world your system is trying to operate in, the stresses, associated with being there. In the real world, with real bridges, yes, we're talking about the wind, earthquakes, rain, high or low temperatures. For organizations, that's the labor market, competitive pressure, regulatory, profit margins, scandals. In Boeing's case, reality wasn't a great place to be. Clients were already impatient. Production pressure was impossibly high. A decade after you order your plane, you might get it. Competitors were taking market share because Boeing couldn't make a dent in the backlog. Reality doesn't change so that your organization can deal with it. Your organization or team has to figure out how to deal with the load. But before we can do that, we have to actually see it. Awareness is how clearly you understand reality. Do we get the market? Do we know the signals and are they visible? Are our people speaking up when they see something? The problems surface early. If awareness is weak, the whole system is built on missing information. At Boeing, the executives were aware of the past issues and regulatory actions. Employees say that their managers weren't escalating nearly enough of the problems they were facing, perhaps because escalation meant reduced bonuses. So there was local understanding, but senior leaders may have been insulated until the whistleblowers came forward. If awareness is weak, the entire structure is vulnerable to whatever stresses and loads that already are existing. It's like pouring the foundation for a bridge in Alaska, but somehow using materials that aren't durable in low temperatures. It doesn't matter how strong the rest of the bridge is. When the footing washes away, everything else goes with it. But if awareness is solid, from there, we can decide what matters. So purpose sets the priorities and defines our trade-offs. When pressure hits, purpose tells the system what to protect. Speed versus certainty, output versus safety. Boeing seemed to want to prioritize all of it. And if purpose is unclear, trade-offs become inconsistent. When we're under pressure, our teams, our people are going to protect whatever makes sense in that moment. What's supposed to happen is purpose establishes those trade-offs and rules make the purpose real. They should clearly state in the rules, this thing matters more than that thing. They establish who can decide, what things have to be checked or approved, what can't be skipped. It's like the guardrails that keep things on track. Instructions for avoiding problems and making progress. If Boeing's purpose prioritized safety, then their rules should protect safety. And major concerns should take priority when competing against stuff like production pressure. If that's missing, if that's not there, then the guardrails are no longer on the bridge. But remember those incentive programs that penalized employees who might rightly halt production or raise issues. It's not that the guardrails were missing, it's that somehow they got removed. A purpose without genuine trade-offs and formalized within rules. It tells us that any decision is okay, including making a right turn off the side of the bridge. Generally not the best of ideas, but if we get the rules right, the next layer would be systems. This is our tools, or workflows, the processes we use. Done right, systems help people do the right thing more easily, better, faster, and more consistently. In other words, systems should serve purpose and embed rules so that they're harder to violate than to follow. But what if we build a bridge and don't really have the time or funds to deliver the systems we need? That's a common issue. Think of the biggest bridge in your state, and now think of it with no lane lines during rush hour. How do you think that's going to go? How long before people are driving on the curbs or driving into oncoming traffic? Organizations without systems are right there. They are creating a system that is only going to be experiencing chaos under load. When systems do have rules embedded, work can flow more smoothly. But without connection to the rules, people may feel that they can safely work around them. Like if the rules don't enforce things well enough, you end up seeing when you're in traffic that guy that's taking the parking lane around you. At Boeing, production systems, the processes were built to keep flow moving. But when systems and rules don't align with each other or the organization purpose, and the pressure is clear to deliver on the decade of backlog orders, people adapt. They make assumptions. They start ignoring those lane lines or creating their own so they can get their job done, which is what execution is. This is where the organization's main work actually happens. It's where we see the output, behavior, the errors, results. As I said, when something fails, this is where we usually notice it. Execution can only be as good as our awareness, our purpose, rules, and systems allow it to be. So if our awareness is weak, purpose unclear, rules inconsistent, if we don't have the right system to support the work, execution is what absorbs the strain. So when something goes wrong, we should never just be looking at execution. Yes, it's true. In the case of the door, 4 retaining bolts were never replaced after work was done. That was an execution issue, but that kind of early mistake isn't uncommon. We're human. Stuff gets missed. An organization with a clear purpose, aligned rules, supportive systems, it's built to catch this before it leaves the building. So something else lower in the bridge structure enabled that error to leave the factory. I'm not going to dwell on this, but since I'm relying so much on the door failure issue, I figure I should at least share what it was that investigators found about the specific events. So at execution, we had a failure to reinstall 4 bolts. At the system level, work was moving without enough time, tracking, documentation, inspection, or structure to catch issues. At the rules level, stopping the line carried a cost, and there was no policy that mandated anyone should even check for the parts that weren't installed. At the purpose level, speed had become the priority. At the awareness level, signals existed. We had delays, whistleblower complaints, regulatory action. And the reality was lots of constraints and unbelievably high demand. Each layer is supposed to be carrying part of that load. And while the investigators pointed to systems as the main concern, when we look at the bridge, every single layer, all of them are compromised. When you map this across an organization, the misalignments and strained layers tend to cluster beneath the visible performance problems. So it's rare that you'll find consistently high-performing teams executing on top of anything other than a structure that supports whatever load it is they're built to carry. And not coincidentally, we built a tool that makes it visible. You can see how different parts of the organization are carrying load differently and where structures are effective or in need of adjustment. If you're more than a couple of years out of school, this is going to feel familiar. A team makes a change, maybe as part of an improvement project. Things start to firm up, numbers start to move, and things start to look better. And then slowly things go back. Old patterns return, workarounds come back. You get snapback because the slope of the hill supporting the behavior hasn't changed. Individual heroism can only last so long. Eventually, it returns to what's sustainable. And that's only going to be as good as those systems and rules are built to make things sustainable. So instead of starting with training and behavior change, find the flaw in the structure. Each bridge layer shows strain differently. It's not just noise. It's giving you direction, telling you what needs to be realigned. And we can make this into something practical. You can do this in your own work. When you see a problem that keeps coming back, we got 5 questions for you. First, what keeps repeating? Once can be a performance issue a few times with different people, different teams, much more likely to be the system. Second, what's being protected and why? The repetition is the result of a trade-off. We need to find it. Third, are we built for this kind of load? Do our ways of working, the rules we're supposed to follow, systems we're supposed to be using, do they fit the pressure we're actually under? Fourth, where's the bridge bending? We've got the layers, awareness through execution, and all of them have different ways they indicate strain or misalignment. And almost all of them require execution to occur for them to be visible. Having tools that can help you trace the systems back down to root causes is important. If we only ever look to performance and execution, we're basically saying the people who drive on our bridge are responsible for how well it holds up to the element, to earthquakes, fires, traffic. And it's not the responsibility of the bridge's engineers or an organization's strategic advisors. If cars are regularly driving into oncoming traffic, teetering on the edge of the bridge, is that more likely to be fixed with more driving lessons or with stronger guardrails, better lane dividers that prevent well-intentioned drivers from doing those things? And then last, what has to change there first? Not everything. Start with the first lowest structural move. Ideally, there's something in your bridge somewhere, a solid layer that's reliable, and you can shift the layers above to connect and align with that. Sometimes you might have to go all the way back down to bedrock and improve your awareness so that you're able to adapt to reality. So these 5 questions, they're powerful, but they're also hard to answer at scale. Different teams within the organization will answer differently. Leaders will see different versions of reality. And this is one of the core things that our tool does. It gathers that input, structures it, and shows you where the system is actually misaligned. And once you can see it, you can begin to change things in a way that will actually hold. So the 5 questions help you see, to get a diagnosis and understand that structure. But understanding doesn't matter if nothing changes. So in most cases, that's exactly what happens or doesn't happen. Nothing changes. I think the stat is that for interventions, trainings, 70% of it is never used on the job, because seeing the problem doesn't create actions by itself, even when everyone agrees. Systems don't change just because we understand that they're not working right. They change when something structural actually moves. And that's the gap we have to close, from understanding to action. So the way you move forward, first acknowledge that in a lot of cases, you have to have a 2-pronged approach. Something immediate to stop the bleeding at a performance level. So acknowledging that that's probably going to have to rely on personal heroics, individuals. And then something else meant to provide or to prevent future issues. And ideally, both would start small. The goal isn't to rip and replace your entire organization or retrain everyone. It's to establish a base that can support the load. So we're talking about decision rules, an incentive that actually reinforces the behavior that you want, a systematized workflow rather than one-off, clarified trade-offs, something that shifts how the work actually happened, built on top of that lowest stable layer of your bridge. And it should be small enough to test. Because when people see a change working in practice, that it builds confidence, momentum. And that's how real change begins, not with the big rollout, we're changing everything, but with a clear, solid first step. The hard part is knowing which change is going to hold. And most interventions don't fail because they're wrong. They fail because they're aimed at that wrong layer. The system we've developed helps identify that. So you're not guessing where to act, and you can move faster and with more confidence. So if you want to take that step, you need leaders who understand and agree that the step is necessary. To make a structural change stick, you can't do it without leadership. And leaders care about different things. So for most senior leaders, your CEOs, COO, CFO, department heads, the focus is usually pretty clear. They care about outcomes, different ones, but they should be outcomes: risk, revenue, profit margin, employee retention. So when we bring insights that can lead to positive change, whatever you do, don't lead with all this stuff I'm talking about today, the theory, the system thinking. Start with the impact. Show them what keeps repeating, what it costs, where the risk is, and then connect that to structure. Show them how the system that you have is producing the result that they don't want. Because once leaders see that link, you have their attention and the conversation can shift. It's not talking about why their people aren't working harder or doing more. It's what in the system needs to change to help get the result that we want. When it's done well, you're not bringing leaders a problem. You're bringing them a clear structural diagnosis, an understanding of where the system is misaligned, what trade-off is actually being made, and what change will move results. That's the difference between a conversation that stalls and one that gets action. It's not just the senior-most executives. The role you play, whether you're in HR, organizational development, IO psych, training, it's bigger than improving processes or just getting people to behave differently. You shape the system that people work inside of. You influence what gets protected, how work moves, and whether or not your organization can handle the real-world pressure. When the structure is right for the situation, your people don't have to fight the system to do the right thing. They can focus on the work, and performance flows. Because when the system can carry the load and not require individual heroics alone, the results don't just improve, they hold. So I think this is all of us on this call in our professions at the head of organization. It's what everyone wants. And so a quick reminder, we will send anyone who fills out the option on the response form our introduction to the archetypes. So you can start using this stuff immediately. And I've been hinting at the fact, not really hinting, overtly stating, we have a tool. It's based on 20 years of research and field testing of the theories I've talked about today. And it's been a very long time coming. We have taken everything that you've seen today and built it into a working and largely automated system. You don't have to use it. All of this stuff can be done by individuals. The system asks executives, employees, a set of 6 to 8 multiple choice questions, and it gives us a snapshot of the organizational load as well. So stuff like trends and sustainability on revenue, margin, turnover, that stuff. And then we do math, lots and lots of math. The content you see on the screen was produced by the cipher itself, not AI, not handwritten. It's pulling directly from those 20 years of research and testing. It helps organizations understand their overall archetype and team level differences, identifies where the friction is coming from, not just where it shows up. It shows where the system is misaligned, what the load is, and it explains why common interventions don't work and which interventions can actually make a difference. And it does all of this already structured to drive executive interest, the rapid action, and quick measurable improvements that the theories that we were talking about, the methods that we were talking about, will do for you. So the cipher is designed to produce those initial findings in seconds rather than the 3 to 6 months it normally takes, and a fully audited action driving report like the one you see on the screen in a couple of weeks after audit. Output is practical. You see where the teams are optimized and where they're not. You see different ways of working are colliding, where structure is under strain, and you get clear guidance on what to change. Not everything, but the right thing. So we're leaving you with all this stuff we've talked about, and tangible steps and methods you can use to create lasting change with or without using our tools. But yes, we are currently looking for a small number of pilot organizations, typically mid-sized or larger. And in addition to the Archetypes Guide to help you out, I'm happy to talk with any of you individually for 15 minutes about how the stuff we've talked about can be applied in your own specific situation.
So Danielle asked a question. She said, this might sound silly, but is this something that we need to get certified in, or is it straightforward in using the document?
There is no certification. This is based on the consulting work we've been doing. So the theories that we have been discussing, if you want to apply them in your own work, by all means, particularly if you are an internal, by all means do it, try it. There is no requirement to have to use the tool that we're building. So no, not silly at all. And ultimately, as we grow and have the funding to scale ourselves, we will be doing things like developing a program to certify folks in how to use this, be able to train folks to implement this so that organizations can actually use it end to end. The thing for me, and the reason why I went through this process of putting everything into a tool, is that when Brittany and I were when we were doing this work and doing it manually, minimum 3 months, more likely to be 4 to 6 to get through the entire process. And the results were variable. So it depended. If I was in a bad mood, the things that I put in the report were different than if I was in a good one, or if I disagreed with some of the principles on site. It's really hard to take your own bias out of it. Having everything systematized means that whatever results are being delivered, it's not because the system doesn't like that company. This is something that people tend to want. Yes, we are giving you a document that will have this, but I think in our past experience, this has been where people tend to have the most questions. I'll keep this up for now.
I think what's really interesting, one of the things that I am learning through my research is everything is just in so many layers, right? So even if from the stance of team function, team dynamics, team performance, fixing those components a little bit, to your point with workplace archetypes here, there's so many moving parts and so many things that layer on top of each other that, if you think that you're solving for one thing, it really could be something else.
Mhm.
So I really like what you have here because it's bringing more visibility into areas that need to be addressed or that really could be the root cause,
Right.
and not just a contributing factor.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. The systems that I presented today, the reason why this is here is because as I was doing early consulting work, I didn't have a way to see those layers. And so it was trial and error of what is it that's going to make sense? How granular do we have to get to start being able to see, all right, we have a history of when somebody forgets to put in the 4 bolts, the traditional fix is train them to put in the 4 bolts. And realizing shortly thereafter, when you're looking at stuff like that, you can't train every single person to do every single potential task perfectly, and that the system has to accommodate. And it was sort of that realization that those layers you're talking about, it's not just different layers of an organization, but different ways of being that you're seeing with the archetype. So yes, it's very complex. This was my current best attempt at trying to give people structure to be able to talk about the stuff that's happening and accurately diagnose. But yeah, I fully acknowledge, I don't know that it is possible to master this in 45 minutes. I'm pretty sure that it isn't. There's much more to it that is going on behind the scenes, all of that math that I mentioned.
Tate, we have a question
Mhm.
about the archetypes visual that's on the screen right now.
Yep.
Can you explain the leftmost column in the gray? Is that categorizing systems?
The gray section that is on the top and the left, these are looking at these values. So action versus analysis, speed versus stability, share, contain, aligned, independent. The terms I think might be a little different, but what we are looking at here is transparency versus restricted and standardized versus independent, autonomous. And then along the top, we're looking at fast and steady versus analysis first or action first. So these are labels, not additional data. It's trying to help you understand what leads to, say, coordinated execution. We have fast action, standardized and transparent. This is what an emergency room ideally would look like, coordinated execution. This standards validation, steady analysis, restricted information, standardized process. That is where your administration, your case management is likely to be most effective. If you try to run your emergency room with this process, people will not survive your waiting room. It does not support the load that ER is put under. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. See you.